There is a booklet containing details of all the Real Rooms featured in the current series. You can get this by writing to Real Rooms, P.O. Box 7, London, W12 8UD. Enclose a cheque or postal order for £3.75, made payable to BSS. And in the next Real Rooms, we get to grips with making a bachelor pad a little more inviting.
It is essentially a residential home for old soldiers.
The day war broke out was on regimental manoeuvres in the area of the Khyber Pass.
Said to the wife, well, my dear, I'm away. Make the best of it.
It was hell.
You had to kill him or be killed.
6 hours after my operator had been killed, ceasefire was announced.
The Royal Hospital lets the cameras in for the first time tonight at 8:30 on BBC Two.
There is somebody doing something to our computers, and it's way too close to the weapons program.
Who do you turn to save the world's most critical computers?
It's like me versus the code.
Can that code be broken? And is there more to good fortune?
This feeling I'd had saved my life that day.
Than just good luck.
Nobody can say for certain whether fate really does or doesn't exist.
Carol Vorderman looks for the answers to more mysteries. Tomorrow at 8 on BBC One.
A summary of the news now on BBC One with Moira Stewart.
Good afternoon. Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz is on his way to the United Nations in New York to discuss the crisis over weapons inspections. Baghdad Radio has said at least one American spy plane entered its airspace today to carry out surveillance for the United Nations.
The American U-2 spy plane entered Iraqi airspace from Saudi Arabia, and after 3 hours of surveillance on behalf of the UN, it flew back there. The Iraqis said the high-altitude plane was out of range of their air defences. They couldn't carry out their threat to shoot it down. On the streets of the Iraqi capital, the anti-American demonstrations put on before the world's cameras are growing. Some 30,000 protesters took part in this one this morning, the rhetoric denouncing the US, matching Saddam Hussein's defiance of the UN. When the Iraqi Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz met the French Foreign Minister en route to the UN overnight, he was told his country's treatment of the UN's weapons inspectors was unacceptable. It's a message Britain supports.
It's very important that we all send Saddam Hussein a message that is resolute, is firm and is united. He must be firmly told that he is not going to be permitted to continue to build weapons of mass destruction.
The UN Security Council is due to meet soon. It's likely it'll listen to Iraq's arguments, but there's little room for negotiation.
The Chancellor, Gordon Brown, has told business to set aside divisions over Europe and work together for the introduction of a European single currency. Speaking to the Confederation of British Industry, Mr. Brown said it was time to get down to the serious business of making sure it was a success.
The Chancellor set out to move the debate at the conference on to how business should prepare for European monetary union. He said the strategy must be to prepare first and then decide later.
Nothing, in my view, should stand in the way of the practical task of equipping our country for the future, of making the next century a century of British prosperity, a Britain top of the league in Europe.
But there are some dissenting voices in the audience. 13 business leaders who signed a letter to the Times are determined that EMU is not the answer.
The nearest analogy is castration. Our voices may be pitched higher in the councils of Europe, but only at the cost of our economic virility.
The CBI says the majority of its members favour joining EMU when the time is right, but the voice of the sceptics will receive a boost when the opposition leader William Hague speaks this afternoon.
The head of the government's advisory body on mad cow disease says there's a significant risk that the human equivalent CJD may be present in the national blood supply. In a BBC interview tonight, Professor John Patterson calls on the government to tighten screening procedures, and he says some of the patients waiting for operations may wish to donate their own blood to cut down on the risk of infection. That's it for now. More news at 1 o'clock.
Another headlines in the southeast.
12 southeast schools named and shamed as among the worst in the country will learn their fate later today. 6 months ago, the schools, including Ashburton High School in Croydon, were given a last chance to improve or face closure by the government. The teenage gang leader jailed for life for killing West London head teacher Philip Lawrence is appealing against his conviction. 17-year-old Liako Tindamo was found guilty of stabbing Mr Lawrence in December 1995. The attack happened at the gates of St George's Roman Catholic School in Maida Vale. British Airways will ask the government to sanction an increase in night flights if Heathrow's Terminal 5 doesn't go ahead. BA says all airlines using the airport need additional flights. The demand is likely to cause fury among residents living nearby. 12,000 women in Kent are to be told today that their smear tests are being re-examined. The Kent and Canterbury Hospital is sending out letters after fears some of the tests may have been conducted incorrectly. 80,000 have already been recalled after previous errors. That's it for now. Let's take a look at the weather forecast now with Suzanne Charlton.
Good afternoon. We're into a spell of showery and indeed rather thundery weather over the western parts of Europe at the moment. And in the last 24 hours up to this morning, some of the wettest weather has been found at home. In fact, down over the southern counties of eastern England, with Hurst-Monceau picking up 40 millimetres of rain, getting on for 1.5 inches of rain in 24 hours. And some thunderstorms as well. You can see they continue to flash away around the Bay of Biscay, also around the Channel and up across some parts of eastern England as well. That thunderstorms, or that area of thunderstorms, milling around with this region of cloud over the northwest of Europe. Rather rugged looking shower cloud there, with a line of cloud from North Africa up across Italy and out towards the eastern areas of Europe, curving back into southern Scandinavia. Now that is, as you might expect, a weather front bringing with it some bursts of rain as well. As that wriggles around over eastern Europe in the next day or so, it'll continue to take some showers eastwards with it. Although around the Aegean and the easternmost parts of the Mediterranean, high pressure will ensure some fine holiday-type weather. Not so in the west, where these low-pressure areas and weather troughs will develop further, again bringing very wet weather in. Meanwhile, the warmth across some eastern parts of Europe keeping going, while across the west it remains a little on the cool side, particularly, of course, we've got those heavy showers around. So showery weather, particularly here at home, most of the showers in the west, the south, and around Scotland, around the coastal areas for the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
You are the phoenix.
A mythical creature.
It is nothing more than a glorified egg.
With a magical mode of transportation.
A carpet is merely a carpet, whereas a phoenix is superlatively a phoenix.
The adventure of a lifetime.
What a voice!
The phoenix.
You're the most beautiful person we've ever seen.
And the carpet.
That was a close squeak.
Begins Sunday at 5 on BBC One.
A new series of celebrity charades in half an hour on BBC One. Give us a clue after sorting out the clues from the bluffs with Bob Holness.
Welcome to Call My Bluff, a game of two halves, and all lined up at one end, 50% of the players, captained by Alan Corran.
Thank you, Bob. Hello. I not only have two very distinguished guests today, they are joined by a joyous coincidence, because some 40-odd years ago, I went to my first folk festival and tasted my first strong drink. Since when I have been totally addicted to both. So it's a joy for me to have on my left, first, Ira Sinclair, that great folk singer. And on my right, master of plonk, that great wine writer, Malcolm Gluck.
And completing the picture, the other 50%, introduced by Sandy Toxvig.
Thank you very much, Bob. You may have seen my first guest in that extraordinary epic, Rhodes. If you didn't see it, it was the long-running saga of an AA repairman in Africa. And here, to be another long-running saga, please welcome my friend, Francis Barber. Alex has worked with all the comedy greats. He worked with Morecambe and Wise, Peter Sellers, Tommy Cooper, and here to ruin an otherwise glittering career, please welcome John Junkin.
Well, where would we be without the rules? Alan and his team will begin by defining a word 3 different ways. Now, 2 of them are bluffs and 1 is true. Sandy and her team will try to guess the correct one. The first word today being Abulia. Alan.
Love it. Possibly the most resonant line in all cinema is the one that falls from Humphrey Bogart's twitchy lips in Casablanca, when he says, of all the gin joints in all the towns all over the world, she had to walk into mine. But have you ever wondered why Rick, he was, the proprietor, was so surprised when Ingrid Bergman, a.k.a. Mrs. Victor Laszlo, actually did walk into his cabaret? Because it was, after all, the most successful cabaret bar in all Morocco. You couldn't get in without a booking. And if he was the proprietor and she'd rung up for a booking, he would have looked down and seen her name there. Now, the reason for this, it's all down to the Abulia, because they didn't take telephone bookings at Rick's. Because the Abulia is a Moroccan telephone exchange. And it is one of the most unreliable telephone exchanges in the world. So he was totally surprised when she walked in. In fact, there is, to underwrite it, but it was taken out for fear of upsetting Moroccan audiences, the original scene with Dooley Wilson didn't show him sitting at a piano, showed him sitting at a telephone. And Ingrid Bergman is saying, dial it, Sam, dial it again. What's the Abulia? It's a duff telephone exchange.
Okay, Isla.
When I saw this first word, I was actually quite relieved because it's familiar to me. Because in fact, I did go on holiday to Tunisia, quite a while ago now, but when I was there, I did as all good holiday makers do. I went to get my magic flying carpet, and as I went en route aboard my camel, I saw by the side of the road tea and coffee sellers, and I stopped to have a cup of tea. And they served this to me in a little earthenware bowl. And as you know, hygiene in hot countries is paramount, and the marvellous thing about these bowls was because they're produced in their millions, you could just take it and smack it on the floor and wallop, that's it, so there's no problem anymore about hygiene. Yes, so an Abulia is in fact a Tunisian non-reusable earthenware bowl.
Good heavens. Thank you very much.
Did you understand?
Yes, perfect. We were there.
Welcome.
We were there.
Abulia is a discreet and very little publicised condition of teenagers, Tory party politicians at the last election, defrocked clergy, etc. Abulia is a loss of willpower. It means you've chucked in the towel, you've given up the ghost, complete loss of willpower.
Thank you very much. So, is it a Moroccan telephone exchange, do you think, or a Tunisian non-reusable earthenware bowl, or a loss of willpower? Abulia, it is, and Sandy's got to guess it.
Moroccan telephone exchange. Sorry, I do think it's a Moroccan telephone exchange. I'm not sure why. Which brings me to Isla and her Tunisian recycling project that she went on.
On a camel?
You went on a camel, on holiday. Can I recommend cars to you? It's just so much more comfy.
Not as much fun.
Not as much fun, no, that's true. So they're so worried about germs in Tunisia that they smash bowls. I find that hard to believe. Nothing wrong with a little bit of washing up liquid, if you ask me, Isla. And I get to the point of I've completely lost the will to choose. I think I'm suffering from Abulia. I think I have a loss of willpower.
Right, Malcolm, prove her right or wrong, please. Good start. Very good. A loss of willpower. Abulia. On we go with Ratak. Oh, Sandy.
Yes, it's a fabulous word, isn't it? It's got so much potential. It could be erratic, as in a pain in thee, or it could be the name of the woman who started the Body Shop. Rather pleased with. Do they still have, I can't remember, do they still have those shops called the reject shops? Do they have those?
Oh, yes.
Yes, they do have those. Oh,
Where they get contestants for this programme.
Well, I'm quite keen to start a shop called the Body Reject Shop, where you would get products more appropriate to me. The Body Shop does things that make you very healthy and very jolly. I really, for my face, just want a product called Awake. That's all right. That's the look I'm going for. I want a cream that says, I can't believe I'm not too old for spots. I want suntan lotion sold specifically for people with fat ankles. I think these are the things that I love. And I think in this shop, this body reject shop of mine, I think you could have a ruttock remover. That would be rather nice. I would like that a lot. And it's for people who have small furrows on the forehead. I mean, look at Alan, he's got a little ploughing competition that goes on across the top of his eyes. Now, it wouldn't, strictly speaking, be a correct use of the term because it is an agricultural term, ruttock. It's fab, isn't it? It's very Edith Evans. Ruttock. And a ruttock is simply a small furrow in agricultural terms.
Right. Frances.
Well, a ruttock, let me take you back to 16th century England, where there was very little to do except to wench a bit and feast a bit of the night time. But I think, as we know from Chaucer, a lot of people, when in April, they went on their pilgrimages, and they didn't have holdalls in those days, so they had sticks in which they packed their belongings, and I think, as we've seen down the centuries, Dick Whittington sort of seemed to get hold of his own ruttock. The verb comes from ruttock, to give someone a good rutting, it seems to me. I believe, because the stick was not only used to hold belongings, but also to ward off other ruttockers along the way on their pilgrimage.
Yes, all right, fine.
Stop now, Francis. Stop
While
now.
you're ahead. Yeah. Is that it?
That's it.
No, I see. We were wanting more. Would you care to have a go, John?
My dear sir, yes.
Yes, of course.
Some few years ago, when I was, I don't know, old enough to have hormones, but not old enough to know what they were trying to tell me, I made a living writing, as Alan and Sandy know, such gems as, if you're in Spain and you want to make your peseta go further, stand with your back to the wind. This led to me being classified very quickly in a group known as low comedy. Low comedy, if you're stuck with it, you are, believe me, stuck with it. Sandy is not. Sandy's material is such that it could be used by the Pope. Possibly with better effect sometimes. Alan is clever because he's an intellectual and he doubles a lot of entendres, but they're so intellectual that only Melvyn Bragg can understand them. So low comedians are always given on this particular show words like ruttock, bullock, dunnock, futtock. They always come to us. Yes. That has nothing to do with the definition. The definition actually has to do with those other writers of comedy fiction, estate agents. People who look at a case of rising damp and advertise it as private fishing rights, that sort of thing. And in the olden days, they would have had to find some elegant expression for a moat. In those days, the people who lived off the fat of somebody else's land didn't surround themselves with solicitors and spin doctors, they surrounded themselves with water. And that was the moat. To get across the moat, you needed a drawbridge. To get across the drawbridge, you needed a ruttock.
Which was?
Ah, gotcha, I love it. It was a piece of rope. Right. Made of hemp and coir, because it had to be both strong enough to pull the drawbridge up, but supple enough to be wound round the drum.
Right.
What a long piece of
So, it's a small furrow in the field or on the forehead. It's 16th century England, a kind of stick or staff, or after all that, it's a kind of rope in the olden days across a drawbridge. So, it's a ruttock, and it's Alan's.
What a pity it is. You're right. I mean, I don't do low comedy. So when Francis said Dick Whittington got hold of his own ruttock, I can't come up with something, although my great pantomime star here on my left might, about midnight and still no Dick. I can't do those. I wish I were a low comedian. John has given us a load of old rope. Drawbridges were pulled up by chains. I know that. They were rather like the opposite of lavatories, but they were pulled up by chains.
Which drawbridges? Not poor drawbridges.
Don't let him bully you.
Sorry.
Don't let him bully
I
you.
wouldn't, no. But I don't want to do Sandy's because it's about furrows on my head. So it's, I think it is, though, because I don't think it can be a stick. I really... but it says rut. It says rut, you see. You're trying to fox me with this rut thing. And I played 48,000 rounds of this game, and the word that looks like what he did... Oh, go on, Sandy.
Sandy?
Make me immortal with a kiss.
He
Drag it out.
I won't, but I will make the ruttocks deeper on your forehead.
Oh, that's a good one.
So, sorry, team. It must be one of the two guests. Which one is it?
King Francis. Oh, well done, Francis. There we go.
Yes, it is. Right, very good.
I gave you a rusty.
A stick or staff in 16th century England. Right. Here's a good one to go on to. Lollapalooza. Isla.
Right, well, I am recently back from Texas, as you may perceive, my tan and so on. I'm just putting that in, you know. But we had a marvellous time there. It was at the Texas Scottish Festival and Highland Games, and as you can imagine, lots of Texans in kilts and Stetsons, and about 1,000 look-alike Bravehearts, and it was a really extraordinary event. But the wonderful thing was how friendly and charming these people were, because they asked myself and my husband if we'd like to go along to one of the most exclusive and privileged clubs in that area, the Fort Worth Country Club. So we went along, and we had an absolute fantastic time. We really had a great time. It really was lovely. We're eating, dining, you know. I mean, let's give you an idea about this place. The food budget for a year is $8 million.
So just one family?
100 members. I was going to say,
What about
about 100. Yeah, can you imagine? It's just extraordinary. Anyway, there we were, having a wonderful time. And about midnight, the MC got up and he said, look, right, time now to introduce you to stunning Lollapalooza. And what appeared was really an apparition in a clinging red dress, sparkly sequins, and got up to the microphone and started to sing, "You must remember this." No, but anyway, she did sing. No, she didn't. Nearly. You're right, but in fact that's right. So a more familiar term for a Lollapalooza is in fact a chanteuse. So it's one of these husky-voiced female singers.
Thank you.
A female singer.
Malcolm's turn.
Am I allowed to be smarmy?
Feel free.
My captain, were he to reside on the other side of the Atlantic, would be a Lollapalooza. Marilyn Monroe was a Lollapalooza. John McEnroe is a Lollapalooza. I think we all know Lollapaloozas. Lollapaloozas exhibit a bestness which is quite extraordinary. They're a one-off best person. That's a Lollapalooza.
Right, fine. Alan.
Mine is not entirely dissimilar. You remember Casablanca? Have you ever asked yourself, what kind of a woman was Mrs. Victor Laszlo, or Ingrid Bergman, that she could capture Rick's flinty, cynical heart? Well, the truth is, she was a Lollapalooza. Very difficult word to use in these quite properly politically correct times, but in 1941 you could use it because it meant a major broad, a top dame, a really corking, one-off head bimbo, the sort of woman who, like Betty Grable or Lana Turner, ended up getting painted on the front of Liberators, going to bomb the ball-bearing works at Schweinfurt. Lollapalooza was simply an absolutely stunning, good-looking woman.
Right, fine. Well, we've got three American definitions here. One is a chanteuse, a female torch singer. One is a one-off best person. And the other one is an American slang for a stunning-looking woman. Lollapalooza goes to John.
Yeah, well, for a start, both Alan and Malcolm sound as though they're saying the same definition to me. I'm not quite sure. Chanteuse, a gorgeous lady, a one-off or a gorgeous lady, they're all saying
No, an American singer.
John McEnroe. I mean, I don't know what your sexual predilections are, John, but you put McEnroe in there.
You live your life and I'll live mine. No, the curious thing is, I know this word, but I don't know what it means. I know it because it was used by one of the most brilliant lyric writers. You should know this, I'm sure you do. Lorenz Hart, who wrote a song called Thou Swell. Thou witty, thou sweet, thou grand, wouldst kiss me pretty, wouldst hold my hand. Both thine eyes are cute to what they do to me. That's a good rhyme. Hear me holler, I choose the sweet Lollapalooza in thee. Now, is he choosing that or that or that? I think the nearest definition is Alan's. I'll go for Alan.
Okay, Alan. It's your terrific, stunning-looking...
John was so brilliant in that. I mean, it really is terrific. I'm sorry to have to do this, but it...
So, it's up to the two guests. Which one had the correct definition?
Here you go.
There you go.
Well done.
Very good. One off best person. One off best person, a Lollapalooza, leads us to Duffadar and Francis.
Well, I'm having a little problem with my duffadar with my neighbours at the moment, because it's, in fact, it's a South African word, so it's in my best South African accent, duffadar, and it means a boundary or a fence. But in South African law, because they were trying to help the Boers and the Zulus come to some sort of mutual acceptance of each other, they extended the boundary of one's house, and therefore it could extend actually until the middle of the road. And as I was coming here today on the A40, I was thinking if Duffadar law still existed, you could have a barbecue actually in the middle of the North Cirque, you know, which wouldn't stop the traffic jams anyway, but there you go. And I do believe also that there's another word that means the same thing for boundary, is a ha-ha, so you could have a Duffadar ha-ha, I suppose. That's what it is.
Thank you.
Boundary.
Okay, John.
Duffadar. My first instinct is that the Australians, being the kind of people they are, it's a national holiday when you hit your father if you don't like him. I don't think this is necessarily true. What it actually is true, believe it or not, is the word comes from the 15th century. In the 15th century, if you joined the British Army and deserted and were caught, you were given 100 lashes. They had to stop this because a number of MPs were enlisting, deserting and being caught about 5 times a week. With the result that they decided on an alternative, and some brilliant soul came up with the idea that if you deserted from the British Army, the best place to hide was the British Navy. I think the man who thought the idea up was the same man who thought it would be a good idea to put holes in umbrellas to stop the wind turning them inside out. It's an idiotic idea, but that's what they did. They used to run and hide in pubs, alehouses, normally full of journalists and actors, and they tried to hide themselves amongst these people. But the press gang would come in, drop the coin in their tankard, they'd accepted the King's shilling or the Queen's shilling, and off they went to the Navy. But as in any government department, somebody had to organise them, and the man who organised them was the Duffadar. He was not aboard a ship, although he was attached to the Royal Navy. He organised the press gangs.
All right. Sandy.
It's Urdu, obviously. Now, I'd say my Urdu is a little bit rusty. But actually, I remember this word because when I was in the Indian Army, years ago now, I was in the irregular cavalry. We had for a short while been the regular cavalry, and then something went wrong in the mess, and they stopped ordering the prunes, and it made everybody very bad tempers, rather sort of backed up feeling, and there was a lot of shouting. There was a lot of shouting. People used to shout, "Duffadar! Bring me another pink gin and a boy for bayonet practice." That was the sort of thing they would shout. And the Duffadar would leap to attention, because that was his job. Because a Duffadar is a subaltern in the Indian Irregular Cavalry.
Right.
A what? A subaltern. Subaltern. I had no idea, Dan.
So, we have 3 definitions: a boundary or a fence in South Africa, the organiser of a press gang in 15th century England, or a subaltern in the irregular Indian cavalry. A Duffadar goes to Isla.
This is quite difficult. Let's see. I don't know. It's very hard to decide. You tell them so well because you're an actress, of course. It's very convincing. I mean, you don't believe a word you say, which makes you think it might be true. And John, well, that's right, the opposite. John, oh gosh, it's really hard. How about the press gangs and everything? No, you're the... Yeah, but the press, I don't know.
It means I'm neither an actor nor to be trusted. That's very nice of you to say that.
Go for one of them.
I think I shall go for John.
Okay, John, it's your press gun organiser.
It is.
Press gang organiser.
Yeah.
It is.
A bluff, sir. It's got to be one of the other 2. It's got to be Sandy. Which is the ladies, is it?
I remember so well.
I had them marked down, but I can't tell you. Well done.
A subaltern in the irregular Indian cavalry, a Duffadar. And the next one coming up, Eveshi. Malcolm.
Eveshi, or Eveshie, as it is pronounced, is a precise and technical term used in the city of London, which was bequeathed to the money grubbers of the City of London when Dick Whittington became mayor. Sir Dunant Evershe, or Eveshee, as he was then called, but we now use the word Evershe in city language, was a rather rascally baronet who reneged on certain deals involving the payment of commission. And the word is used in the city to denote anyone who reneges on a deal to pay commission which is due to somebody else.
Okay, good. Alan, had Casablanca been a... Come on.
I thought you had much more imagination.
Well, you wait. It's coming out of me like spilling intestines. Had Casablanca been a German film, which it might well have been if things have gone the wrong way, what Rick would have said would have been, "Was the beer keller in onze world, she had to walk into mine." And what he would have been describing was an Eveshee. Because that's what Ingrid Bergman would have meant to him. If you read English American novels of the First or Second World War, you find this word cropping up a lot. And it really means a woman who is much better than she should be, I should say, because she seduces and looks after soldiers when they are away from home. It derives from Eve. It's about seduction. It's Evesheen. And Eveshee is just a diminutized version of that. But it's a term for a woman who, in a rather nice way, I mean, she isn't a prostitute, she's just a woman who looks after soldiers and walks around singing things like, "For der Kaserne,
yes,
bei den Großen,
yes, fine, thanks, Alan.
sich wie in Träume." Would you like me to do it in fishnet at top? I'm wonderful in that.
Isla, will you carry on?
Well, this word, in fact, has French connections, a bit like myself, St. Clair, Sainte Claire, and so on. And, in fact, I had a great-grandmother, you know, who was an actress, and she handed down this little verse about a bishop. "There was an old bishop of Rheims who broke his priests down into teams. They walked side by side, Eveshee wide, converting the populace with great efficiency." What's wrong with that? That's wonderful.
Very good.
Anyway, you see, what this... I know it may have lost something in the translation from the old medieval French, but nevertheless, it does show that Eveshee is, in fact, the word to define the area of a French bishopric. So, Eveshee, French bishopric.
Okay. So it's an old term meaning to renege on the commission owed in a business deal, or it's a German definition of a woman who looks after soldiers, or it's a French bishopric. It's Eveshee or Eveshee, depending on who you are, and it's Francis to guess. Rather quickly, please.
Right. Well, in which case, I don't think it's a seductress, a German seductress. I also think we've done Dick Whittington and his Ruttock. So I think it's a French bishopric.
Okay. Isla?
Where is it? Here it is. You found it now.
That's true. Well done. Right. A French bishopric it was, Eveshee or Eveshee, and we've got a very fast one coming up, ladies and gents, please, as we pass on to Fanfreluche, and John picks it up.
Fanfreluche, actually. I know little about diaries because I could never keep one. Every diary I ever had started January the 1st, where am I? And that lasted me for 11 years. I don't fill in diaries. People who do, I admire enormously. There was a man called Joseph Urquhart in the 1600s who filled in a diary religiously in both senses of the word. He was the kind of Mary Whitehouse of his day, and he kept recording in his diary that he found people fanfreluche, meaning behaving in a very wanton and naughty fashion.
Thank you. Sandy?
I think the job that I would be best suited for at a wedding is to play the little woman on top of the cake. I think that would be very good. And I would like to be that little woman because then I could look and admire the fanfreluche. It's the intricate cake icing on wedding cakes.
Right. Francis?
I've come across this word before because I was on a quiz, Woman's Hour, with 3 actors pitted against 3 journalists. And it's a theatrical term for the bit of stage scenery, and it defines sort of moving clouds and all those sorts of gobos effects. A fanfreluche.
Good. So, it's behaving in a wanton fashion, it's an intricate cake decoration, or it's a scenic cloth that unrolls, giving the illusion of movement in a theatre. Fanfreluche. or sh, whichever you like. And Malcolm, a very rapid summary, please.
Well, it's very simple, isn't it, really? It can't possibly be this nonsense about wanton behaviour. This is, I mean, I didn't realise I was coming on a sex show. I mean, one definition after another.
Sometimes you get lucky, Malcolm.
Later, I hope later, perhaps. It can't possibly, John, honestly, you can't expect us to believe that.
You fool, you're ridiculous.
And I think this idea of a backdrop is just absurd. I like the idea of fanfaluki being something to do with intricate icing.
Good,
it
fine.
suggests Vienna. I think that it's got to be the one.
I'm just cross with John for coming on and being so silly. I'm
Thank
annoyed
you.
with you.
No, it's not. So, which of the guests is it? Let's find out.
You've been a fool, John.
Welcome to Colma.
And it was. Well, behaving in a wanton fashion it was, fanfaluch, and that just about rounds things off, because that's the end of the game, and it's a 5-1 victory for Sandy's team. It's time to say goodbye to Isla St. Clair, Alan Corran, Malcolm Gluck, Francis Barber, Sandy Toksvig, John Junkin, and from me too until next time, bye-bye.
BBC One celebrates the birthday of June Whitfield this afternoon with a classic episode of Terry and June at 2:55.
BBC One has got its hands on Hale and Pace.
That's us.
And we're making them suffer.
It's like shoving... Don't, Norman. I think it's very brave of you to actually play in a real polo game.
It's all psyching people out. From high-speed chases to high fashion.
We didn't know the difference between a catwalk and a cat flap.
So you're not going to be able to do it.
Oh, no, don't you catch again.
Somebody's going to have to play it for you.
Think elegant giraffe.
And there's high expectations.
So we've got to advertise a toilet roll. I think that's perfect for you.
Jobs for the Boys shows no mercy, beginning with a little horseplay. Sunday at 7:45 on BBC One.
I shall go to sea, George.
This Sunday on Tom Jones.
I've thrown away my heart on a man who has forsaken me.
Miss Sophia Weston.
I will not marry Mr. Blifil.
There is no other way to succeed with my niece but by violent methods.
You shall have her tomorrow!
Where, oh, where could your ladyship possibly go? To London.
Madam Sophia is, I regret to say, not to be found.
The Classic Feast continues this Sunday at 9 on BBC One.
A new series now on BBC One, the programme that's